one of the main questions right now when we look at the Middle East, which is the situation between Iran and Israel. In your opinion, I ask my audience, our audience here, that is a new cycle of war between Iran and Israel brewing in the Middle East? What's your take on that?
Well, I prefer to start relaying what I heard from connections in Iran, and one of them who relayed to me something from a very high level IRGC source. They are ready for war. And essentially, they said that most of the commanders, if not all of them, with a few exceptions, they have public meetings, etc. They are in their bunkers, concentrated on the possibility of war. One of the terms that they used was war conditions. I don't know if this is a direct translation from Farsi. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But I interpret it as they are analyzing everything around in West Asia, signs coming from Washington, etc., and they consider that the possibility of an attack is very, very high, which is something extremely worrying for all of us and for the global South as a whole. Something parallel to that. I didn't say that before openly because I was waiting for the confirmation. I was ready to go to a very important conference in Iran next week, beginning of next week, about US-Iran relations, essentially. This weekend, we heard from the organizers that the conference was canceled. And guess what? The reason was once again war conditions. So this is very, very serious. I cannot name the organization that is responsible for this conference. I can only say that it's one of the top organizations of the Iranian system. So for them to cancel a conference, bringing foreign guests like us, which would be excellent from their point of view to have foreigners in Iran right now at the moment relaying the Iranian point of view to the outside world and especially to the global South, to cancel that at the last minute, literally. I had already made my visa application. I was already waiting for the confirmation of the visa. And, you know, all that in the last minute is not a good sign. This means that they are very, very worried. And something parallel to that it's on a more, not light, but at least not so hardcore vein. Press TV had announced that they were starting to broadcast the documentary that we shot last May in Iran, which they titled Golden Corridor. It's a very nice title, in fact. This is basically myself and a crew of 5 Iranians, excellent professionals and wonderful people. We crossed Iran from the Caspian Sea to the Persian Gulf and traveling from Tehran to Qom and Isfahan as well. And then to Chabahar, the port in the Sea of Oman, very, very important. And even illegally, I crossed the Iran-Pakistan border illegally, but on a fishing boat. So nobody can say anything, right? So this is the first documentary and basically conducted by a foreigner, which is an enormous honor in my case, about the International North-South Transportation Corridor, which our audience, all of you know, is a BRICS project. Russia, Iran, and India. So now we still don't know when. It's up to Press TV. They're going to reorganize the dates, and I'll keep you all informed. And I ask them, please get a link so anyone, anywhere in the world can access and see the documentary, because many people won't be able to follow the broadcasts live on Press TV. So this is the lighter side of it. So as you see these past few days, everything was turned upside down in Tehran. And that's a sign that they are taking all the signs that they are receiving very, very seriously.
We know what has happened with the case of JCPOA, and Russia,
Mhm.
Iran, China came together to, to unify their position toward what the
Yes,
West is doing. How do you find the situation among these three countries when it comes to, because we've learned also that Russia has provided Iran with MiG-29, the latest version, Su-35, and
yes. Not to
what
mention
is
the Chinese, what the Chinese are not saying, Nima, which is even better. The Chinese are providing Iran with, it's what I heard in Beijing a little over a month ago, but for the moment, this is absolutely off the record. But the Chinese are helping as well.
and how far this sort of security partnership goes in your opinion among these three countries?
Well, in a theory, Nima, you know that they all have strategic partnerships, interlocking strategic partnerships, right? This does not necessarily mean, like it happened last time with the 12-day war launched by Israel with American help against Iran, that Russia and China will be on the front lines in Iran helping Iran. It's a completely different story. There is diplomatic support, of course. There is the interactions inside BRICS and inside SCO. They're all important members, the top members, we can say, in many aspects. But of course, there is what is underground, like what Russia is supposed. There are a lot of Antonov flights these past few weeks from Moscow to Tehran. So we can imagine that they are delivering some serious hardware. And the Chinese, of course, they are way more circumspect, and they don't even say anything explicitly about how they are helping Iran. But in terms of the JCPOA, we could see that the diplomatic support was instantaneous because both Russia and China, which were part of the negotiations in Vienna 10 years ago, and of course, they are signatories of the JCPOA, even before JCPOA went to the UN. I remember very well, especially the Russians in Vienna 10 years ago. Lavrov was a very, very important actor discussing with those stupid Europeans, but especially with John Kerry. And Lavrov and John Kerry, at least they had a mutual respect relationship. That helped a lot. So immediately, Russia and China stated the obvious. Look, because once again of those warmongering Europeans, the JCPOA, as it existed for the past 10 years, is now dead for all practical purposes. So Iran doesn't have to follow anything anymore. And these idiots reinstated the snapback sanctions. Obviously, this was an European American plot against Russia and China. So, once again, how can you possibly have any sort of adult discussion with this so called European political elites? We only see increments of existing wars, hybrid war, hot war, or forever war ahead of them. And of course, different levels when it comes to Russia, China, and Iran. Russia at the top in terms of forever war, Iran right below it, and China below it, especially because the Europeans need what China produces. They cannot live without it. But their mindset is, I would not even qualify it as retrograde. It's bordering, no, it's frankly psychopathic and imbecilic psychopathic, in fact. And they keep antagonizing the top members of the global south, the global majority, BRICS, SCO, action after action after action. In fact, it's not even action from their part, it's reaction to their own stupidity. And because they set a course that is absolutely misguided from the beginning, they cannot change course. So their inimical relationship with what they call the regime in Tehran is more or less on the same level with their inimical relationship with what they call the dictatorship in Russia. It doesn't change. Or, okay, some Europeans are slightly more educated than Americans, but the same would apply to the red communist China. It's the same thing. So this clash between the old world of NATO Stan, essentially, and the Atlanticist West against BRICS, SCO, and the top members of the Global South. So every important instance that we have geopolitically is renewed over and over again. So it's for all of us, it's a source of despair because we already know what's going to happen even before it happens. Everybody knew that these idiots would reinstate the snapback sanctions months before it happened. Everybody knew it. And nobody was capable of instilling some sort of a sense into these stupid leaderships. And I said, look, you are once again alienating the absolute majority of the Global South. And of course, if I remember correctly, all the members of the non-aligned movement, 120 something, they also condemned the reinstating the snapback sanctions. So once again, we have three European powers. You cannot call them powers, no? You know, trash bin of history kind of stuff, plus the Americans antagonizing the absolute majority, the global majority. What else is new, Nima?
You know what's so tragic about Europe? Europe going in the same direction in terms of their foreign policy, going to the same direction as Israel went. Israel
Yes,
has nobody but the United States. And those countries who have some sort of relationship with Israel is because of the United States.
exactly.
And Europe is going in that direction, Pepe. You don't see they don't have independent foreign policy. I don't know how long does it take, because if they become fully dependent on the United States, that would, the moment would come to the public opinion in the United. Why do we need to support Europe? Because if Europe become dependent in terms of energy, oil, gas, and they're not going to be able to afford it because of the price of the US. So after all, it's going to be liability for the United States. That's going to change that the same position that Israel is in right now. I don't know if they see the sort of threat they're bringing to themselves.
No, they don't, Nima. The short answer to your question, they don't. First of all, because their own inner mediocrity. The fact that most of them, their popularity rates are beyond appalling, and they know that they have to stick to something, otherwise they are going to be brought down. And we could even get to a pitchfork scenario, or, having Madame Guillotine have a conversation with many of them, if not all of them. The exceptions are, of course, some Eastern Europeans who are on the margins, like in the case of Hungary, not exactly on the margins. Hungary is probably the number one opponent of Brussels stupidity. And at least Orban says that openly. And everybody knows it in Western Europe, in Eastern Europe, and beyond. Slovakia as well. Some movements by Austria as well. So there is opposition against Brussels Kafkaesque stupidity, let's put it this way. But nothing will change the course that they set years ago, if not decades ago. When we look at those harpies at the head of the European Commission, and when we look especially at that stupid Dutchman, Stale Good, as the Secretary General of NATO, when you put these all together, not only there is stupidity, but their total misreading of the current geopolitical situation in Europe, in the West, and around the world. And on top of it, the vassalization process. Everything is happening as Europe is being vassalized to a point of no return by the Americans. And the Trump 2.0 leadership, let's put it this way, plus the absolute majority of Republicans, they despise Europe as allies and as vassals. They have less than zero importance on anything. They are not even allowed to sit at the dog's table right beside the big banquet where the real powers sit, you know. And they brought this on themselves. And obviously, because they brought them on themselves, they have no self-critical instincts to analyze what they did to themselves. It's impossible, absolutely impossible. So we are watching them being more and more ostracized by the global south, Israeli style, as you mentioned, correct. The only thing that they have is to ramp up the rhetoric and, of course, those threats with what they don't have, like manpower, capable armies, enough weapons, even if bought from the US, considering what the US will be interested in selling them, even if it's paid by overvalued euros, by the way. And of course, threats against Russia, Iran, and on and off China nonstop. That's everything that they had. And of course, even worse, pure theft. Today is Wednesday, right, Nima? Guess what's going to be decided tomorrow in Brussels? If they're actually gonna dare to steal, literally steal, at least 140 billion euros of Russian assets and find some legal maneuvering to transfer their own terminology. These funds for use their own terminology by those Kiev gangsters. Well, if that happens, bye-bye to anybody investing in the European Union, and bye-bye to any credibility of the euro and the European Union at large. So let's see what's going to happen tomorrow in Brussels. Tomorrow is a very, very important landmark. Let's see. There are some people, there are some economists around Europe who are saying, look, you better think 10 times before you do that, because then we are all screwed. So let's see. But don't forget, this is not a geoeconomic or geopolitical decision. It's a narrow political decision by these absolutely disgusting so-called leaders of the European Union, which have more power than the nation states that compose the European Union. So the situation is really, really bleak. And there's no way out, Nima. It's going to get worse and worse and worse.